Chapter 646, You Are Not Suitable. Lu Shu walked on the road. He had kept the goods from Zhao Yongchen in the Seal of Lands. He looked out as far as the eye could see. This African city was desolate and dilapidated. This place had experienced many wars. Furthermore, the locals here were not very courageous. Many of them wanted to reap without sowing. He was not belittling them. Their personalities were indeed very different from the people back home. This piece of land was very fertile. There were many resources whose potential had not been tapped on. When Lu Shu walked past the building, he could still see a hole in the building, as well as countless dilapidated walls. When he returned to the villa, everyone was in the living room discussing their next move. Lu Shu realized that for some reason, while he was gone, the secret practitioners and the three negotiators had become closer with each other. What was happening? How did these two groups of people bond so quickly? To be honest, Lu Shu did not expect that the secret practitioners and the negotiators would be bound by hatred for a common enemy, Lu Shu. Thus, they were on much better terms with each other. After entering the villa, Lu Shu walked up. Lu Fan shouted, "Where did you go? The mineral resources are very important. Don't you feel that you should help out? We have put in so much effort. And here you are, observing by the side?" Lu Shu was dumbfounded. What exactly have you guys done? This baffled Lu Fan and the rest. Up till now, everyone had only been discussing. As for the concrete steps they would take to carry out the organization, they had not even seen the people from EO, let alone start any negotiation. If you were to ask them what exactly they had done, even Lu Fan could not come up with an answer. From Lu Fan's distress, plus 99. From Xiaorenqing's. Lu Shu had offended everyone. He had rejected everyone's contributions. The negotiations will eventually begin. We have to make preparations in advance so that during the actual negotiations, we will be able to proceed smoothly, said Li Ganyu coldly. Lu Shu nodded his head and went up. If he said this, they may not believe him. But he thought that the talks would not go through. In other words, if he succeeded, then Lu Fan's, Li Ganyu's, and everyone else's preparations would be for nothing. But he could not accuse them of not taking the initiative. The Heavenly Network's objective this time was to obtain all the mineral resources. Lu Shu had his own judgment of the situation. He felt that as long as one organization took all the mineral resources for themselves, they would definitely be attacked by the others. He did not know how he could obtain the resources. But now, he decided to just stir up trouble. Lu Shu returned to his room and took out the goods that Zhao Yongchen had given to him. He found an army uniform and a beret. After he changed his clothes, he changed his appearance to that of Bennett's and jumped out of the window. At first, he had thrown the stinky tofu to make the large organizations give up on surveillance. Now, the entire vegetation was filled with the smell of stinky tofu. No one would be able to stay there for long. This made movement for Lu Shu much easier. If he did not do so and someone saw him jump out of the window, what would he do? Thus, Lu Shu felt that he had great farsightedness, although he did not think of this back then when he threw the stinky tofu. Lu Shu walked around and arrived at the villa where the Phoenix Society was staying at. The members of the Phoenix Society were doing shifts at the door. Initially, they did not plan to do so. Now, they did so to escape the stench of stinky tofu. After all, the box of stinky tofu back then had made them nauseous for an entire night. The smell still had not dissipated. Lu Shu calmly stood at the door. I have something to discuss with Howard. The members of the Phoenix Society looked helplessly at each other and welcomed Lu Shu in. In the afternoon, they were still talking about Bennett's message that he would talk to whoever found the culprit first. They had decided to wait patiently, but they did not expect Bennett to personally come and find them. It seemed like the message was just an excuse. They had to pretend to advance on one path while secretly going along another. Howard walked down with a smile. He said proudly, "Mr. Bennett, you have made a wise decision. The Phoenix Society is your best partner." Lu Shu calmly said, "There's no use just talking. I need to see the actual goods. After all, there are many organizations competing. What has the Phoenix Society brought to me? We have whatever the other organizations have. I heard that Mr. Bennett's son has not awakened. The Phoenix Society has a fruit that can awaken Earth-type abilities," Howard said. Lu Shu felt slightly disappointed. He had no use for the fruit. After all, he could not eat it. How nice it would be if he could obtain a weapon. But either way, Howard was giving it to him for nothing. He said calmly, "Then what are you waiting for?"
Ha! Ha!
"Mr. Bennett, there's no hurry." Howard invited Bennett to sit on the sofa. From this, Lu Shu could see Howard's superiority. They were evidently on EO land, but he acted like the owner of the house. This was the result of being one of the most powerful people. To be honest, destroying EO would be like completing an easy game to a Class A. This was a true top-notch organization. This time Lu Shu did not come to obtain goods. The people in charge of foreign affairs from the large organizations would not commit themselves until success was certain. Was it logical to offer payment even without seeing the actual goods? They had nothing to fear because of their strong backing. Thus, from the start, Lu Shu had determined that it was not realistic for him to obtain anything. He was only testing the water. He had no time for this. He went straight to the main point. Lu Shu thought about it and said, "The Phoenix Society wants to obtain the mineral resources through us, right?" He had hit the nail on its head. Everyone clearly had this intention. Lu Shu just wanted them to reveal it. Howard laughed and calmed down. He said in a serious tone, "Mr. Bennett, I don't know why you have called the large organizations here. Since you've said it, we will not hesitate to lay our cards on the table. The mercenary organization EO has developed very well in Africa. But we are facing some limitations. We are too weak to set our eyes on the world. Thus, we plan to choose an organization to protect us through this deal. Frankly speaking, it is a merger," Lu Shu said. He had randomly come up with an explanation. Howard's eyes lit up. So this was Bennett's original intention. The Phoenix Society was their first choice because of its power. As for the merger, they would wait until the influence of Bennett and the others were taken away by the Phoenix Society. Then, they would have no say. Howard laughed. "So, Mr. Bennett, what do you think about the Phoenix Society?" Lu Shu was silent. "You are not suitable." Howard was speechless. From Howard Miller's distress, plus 999. Howard could not understand Bennett. "After all that trouble, you only came to say this? Are you crazy?" Chapter 647, A Huge Mess. Howard's expression instantly changed. He did not think that Bennett, the leader of a second-rate organization, was this crazy. He actually dared to come here alone and talk wildly like that. Lu Shu imitated Bennett's expression. He maintained a calm but fierce expression. "What, do you think that I have to fear you just because I am alone? You can try to hold me back. The Phoenix Society is indeed very strong, but this is not America." Wait. Howard suddenly felt that Bennett was very confident. Did he already form an agreement with the Department of Faith Theory? Or the Heavenly Network? So Bennett was not here to negotiate with him. He was most likely here to spur him on, then destroy all the members of the Phoenix Society here. In the worst-case scenario, the Department of Faith Theory and the Heavenly Network would already have cooperated. This would explain why the Heavenly Network did not send any members with high combat abilities. The two organizations had already come to an agreement. It was enough for just Francesco to come. As for what exactly had happened, Howard had not worked it out. Howard did not think about the other large organizations, as only the Department of Faith Theory and the Heavenly Network had Class A's. Only these kinds of top-notch organizations would be able to give Bennett the courage to face the Phoenix Society. Send him off, Howard said with a wave of his hand. He did not want to get into a conflict with Bennett. He decided to remain calm and get rid of any misleading leads before uncovering the truth. The organizations that Bennett had invited had indeed given EO the liberty to choose. But this also gave Lu Shu a lot of room to express his creativity. Lu Shu walked out and took the opportunity to go to the villa where the Department of Faith Theory was staying at. Not matter whether it was the Phoenix Society or the Department of Faith Theory, Lu Shu realized that the thought processes of the people in charge of foreign affairs were amazing. It seemed that only prudent people like them were suitable to handle foreign affairs. So why did Nie Ting feel that he was suitable? He felt that he was prudent in his own life, but to others, it was decent. If he really became the person in charge of foreign affairs and gathered with those from the other organizations, he was evidently different from the rest. Francesco from the Department of Faith Theory was more introverted than Howard. But this could also mean that he thought a lot. Thus, after Lu Shu earned distress points from the Department of Faith Theory, he would leave. Lu Shu felt a sense of pity. He knew that Howard was willing to give items like awakening fruits to pull him over to his side, but Lu Shu did not get anything. Since he wanted to earn, then he had to work together and have some substantial progress. But Lu Shu was alone. He was not the real Bennett either. How could he work together? After he was done with the two large organizations, the remaining organizations were easier to handle. Those organizations were stronger than EO, but there was a limit to their strength. At most, they had a few Class B experts and were not a real threat. No matter whether they were suspicious, they would not dare to attack. They would just not understand Bennett and think that there was something wrong with him. Was it appropriate for him to come over late at night just to anger people? Lu Shu was used to acting. Even Xia Rensheng and the rest were not spared. Bennett was still in a frenzy to find the culprit. On the other hand, all the organizations felt that they were being targeted. Lu Shu happily jumped back into his room and ate a chi fruit. Even if there was a disaster outside, he could only do so much, right? As for the others, he would act according to the circumstances. He would see the reactions of the large organizations before deciding on his next course of action. The next day, Bennett finally calmed down. He realized that he may not be able to find the culprit. But he could not cancel the talks. Back then, he was taking a large risk in inviting so many organizations here. He was very clear that he had to rely on the conflict and suspicion between the organizations in order to benefit. He could not be upset. Thus, he immediately deployed people to invite the organizations to a second round of negotiations. But when his staff returned, they told him that the attitude of the large organizations had changed. All of them rejected the invitation and did not want to hold talks anymore. Bennett was dumbfounded. What was happening? Why did they not want to discuss? If only one or two organizations backed out, it was not a problem. But all 11 organizations had suddenly changed in their attitude. Had the world changed overnight? Bennett was suspicious. He told his subordinates to bring some special local products to the large organizations as a gift. This was a small matter. He wanted to see how the large organizations would react. Why in the world did they reject? The subordinates left dumbfounded and came back dumbfounded. The reply from the organizations? We are not suitable. Bennett was confused. From Bennett Thomas's distress points, plus 999. What were you not suitable for? If you were not suitable, then who else in the realm of cultivation would be suitable? And everyone said the same thing. Are you kidding me? Lu Shu earned an endless flow of distress points. After the first big wave, he only earned a few points here and there. But it was much faster than back then when he had just started to build his chi mountain. After all, he had more areas to aim at. He did not have to continue eating nebula fruits. He felt that his efficiency was very high just by eating chi fruit. His second chi mountain was almost complete. As he waited for the birth of his second sword spirit, he did not care what was happening outside. After the formation of the chi mountain, he still had to scrape it. But this time, it was different. He scraped the bottom of the chi mountain as he built it. He did not delay any further. When it was time for a meal, Lu Shu headed to the dining room to make himself some food. He saw Lu Fan, Xia Runsheng and Li Ganyu discussing in the living room. Lu Shu was suddenly happy. How were the talks? Lu Fan held back. They have not started. From Lu Fan's distress, plus 399. From. Lu Shu did not question further. Instead, he encouraged them. All the best. There will eventually be talks. From Lu Fan's distress, plus 499. From. To Lu Shu, everyone's objective was the same, thus he did not want to discount their enthusiasm. It was just that the methods that they used was different. But he was obviously cheering them on. So why were there distress points? At that moment, there was a sudden uproar outside. There were people fighting. The fight started quickly and ended quickly. Xia Rensheng took a quick look outside and came back. He said there was some conflict between the steel organization from Germany and the Sardin organization from Italy. It was nothing big. Everyone realized that the large organizations were fired up. Chapter 648, Fight. Fight. At first, the situation was very straightforward for EO. There were only two outcomes. First, they could mediate the discussion between the large organizations and eventually benefit. Second, they would be destroyed by the large organizations and the winners would then distribute the mineral resources. The day after Lu Shu tricked the large organizations, he received the latest news from the Heavenly Network. EO had made this decision not because Bennett was superior and brave, but because the Department of Faith Theory had prescribed a time limit for EO to give them the mineral resources. Bennett did not give in. He took a dangerous risk and invited 11 organizations in one go. In the worst-case scenario, it would become a life-and-death struggle with the Department of Faith Theory. Lu Shu's doubts had been cleared. Bennett was not taking a huge gamble. Lu Shu felt that although Bennett could be considered an expert in the realm of cultivation, he was not powerful, nor did he brag that he was smart. One could even say that he was not particularly intelligent. So why was he taking such a risk? So the Department of Faith Theory had been involved all along. Lu Shu had to protect himself. To be honest, Lu Shu respected Bennett. Lu Shu felt that the realm of cultivation had now become a place where the weak were prey to the strong. The Department of Faith Theory, who had Class A's, unscrupulously plundered resources, while Bennett, who was a Class B, could only use a potentially fatal method to protect himself. But after spending so much time on this land, Bennett had not done many good deeds. The information that Lu Shu received indicated that the military training camp Bennett had initiated was to provide EO with new blood. But the people in the training camp were not recruited. Instead, they were forced to join. They destroyed an entire village and took their children away. Lu Shu had heard of this before, but after reading the information provided, he felt that this was completely unethical. Lu Shu silently ate a chi fruit in the villa. Now, the large organizations and EO were thrown into a state of chaos. It was not time for Lu Shu to make his move. He felt that the situation would be worsened if he did so. But if the Heavenly Network could get a hold of this information, Howard most likely could as well. Earlier, he had made the organizations falsely assume that Bennett had backing. How would the situation develop now? That night, Lu Shu suddenly sensed a wave of energy from outside the villa. The frightening power from the wave of energy made Lu Shu realize that something major had occurred outside. He jumped up to the rooftop of the villa. He suddenly saw a gigantic fire phoenix with fiery wings flying towards Francesco from the Department of Faith Theory. Flames occasionally dissipated from its wings, like feathers dropping. But these feathers were very dangerous. They did not dare to stand on their feet. Their subordinates waited outside the battlefield and prevented anyone from launching a surprise attack. Howard pointed his magnificent red staff at the sky. The fire phoenix turned from orange to a deep red. All the subordinates were sent flying by an explosion. Francesco walked slowly, as if he had not been affected. When the fire phoenix appeared in front of him, he suddenly spread out his arms. A pure white light appeared in front of him and acted as a shield, keeping the fire phoenix out. He calmly flew upwards, as if he was in a storm. He calmly said, "The light of a villain must be extinguished. His flame does not have to shine." Howard laughed coldly. The Department of Faith Theory is such a sanctimonious organization. Since you have formed an alliance with Bennett, you must face the rage of the Phoenix Society. Francesco fell silent. He could not understand. Wasn't Bennett's backing the Phoenix Society? Why was the Phoenix Society so angry? Francesco consciously realized that something was not right. They had all assumed that Bennett had the backing of a large organization, but was Bennett deliberately confusing them and putting up an act? So he had no backing in the first place. What was Bennett doing? They may not believe this, but even Bennett himself did not know what he was doing. But Francesco did not want Howard to know the truth. He could seize more benefits when there was information asymmetry. Suddenly, Francesco drew his long sword from within his white cloak. The sword produced a silver light that shone towards the fire phoenix. The air was distorted because of this silver light. The conflict between the two Class B experts was terrifying. The silver light engulfed the fire phoenix. Howard felt that it would be difficult for his fire phoenix to escape this bind. He placed his staff on the floor and burst into raging flames. He leaped towards Francesco like a fiery poison snake. Suddenly, a Class B Earth element metahuman who had been watching them suddenly attacked Howard. Francesco broke into a smile. This time, 11 organizations had come. No one would seize the mineral resources by themselves. The alliances had already decided on their formation. They were just waiting for the actual battle. Howard, who was vulnerable, was suddenly sent flying into the air by the soil underneath his feet. Howard was indeed very strong. When the ground underneath him rose, he had completely merged with the flames. The flames protected him. However, his staff that he had left on the floor was sent flying outwards. The fire phoenix returned to its orange color and its strength had decreased considerably. Francesco slowly folded his cloak and walked towards Howard. Suddenly, a massive stone flew over. Someone shouted, "Howard, we will work together to kill them?" The massive stone flew past Francesco. Francesco suddenly recalled the hole in the EO headquarters caused by the small mountain. For some reason, Francesco suddenly realized something. So Howard had destroyed the EO headquarters? Why would he do so? Howard thought for a long time, but he could not understand why these reinforcements had come. Out of the 11 organizations, the Phoenix Society had allies as well, but this white person who attacked, he did not recognize them at all. They probably wanted to borrow his power to pin down the Department of Faith Theory. After all, if anything happened to him here, the Department of Faith Theory would dominate the entire situation. Howard knew that he was probably being used as a weapon by others. But he did not reject this, as he needed to give the Department of Faith Theory some pressure. But that person did not run towards Francesco. Instead, his target was Howard's staff. Suddenly, a silence descended on the battlefield. Everyone looked helplessly as the white person bent down and picked up Howard's staff before running off. From Howard Miller's Distress, plus 999. What was happening? When Howard saw the figure running away, he became angry. Chapter 649, The Flow is most intriguing. This fight should not have ended this way. The Phoenix Society and the Department of Faith Theory would be inextricably involved in a dispute. They would use up all their strategies and allies. The other organizations would take sides with the two organizations. Eventually, it would become an earth-shaking battle. After all, the two organizations had expanded their influence overseas. It was inevitable that they would clash. Leaving aside the Heavenly Network, a first-rate organization that did not seem very strong on the surface, the strongest global practitioner organizations were the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society, both had Class A's. Thus, they would eventually get into a conflict. Even the leaders of the two organizations were mentally prepared for this. The two organizations had intended to fight when they met in Africa. But everything changed after Howard's fire staff had been taken away by that white man. The situation had spiraled out of control. Not only was Howard very shocked and very angry, even Francesco was dumbfounded. Who was that? They were both left dumbfounded. No one understood what had happened. But when Francesco thought about how Howard's staff had been stolen, he almost could not help but laugh out loud. Howard did his best to maintain the connection between him and his staff, but realized that the staff had seemingly disappeared from his senses. There was no response. There was only one explanation. The person had placed the staff in their invisible storage equipment. Who on earth was that person? Everyone began to analyze the information on this person. He was the one who threw the stinky tofu. He was the one who attacked the EO headquarters. He was the one who stole Howard's staff. What exactly did he want? Which organization was he from? To be honest, there were instances of subterfuge in legends, but it was nothing too mysterious. Makeup could do wonders. But they had never seen anyone who could change their race as a disguise. With this subconscious knowledge, no one thought of the Heavenly Network. After all, this person was at least a Class B. They had never heard of any foreign experts that had joined the Heavenly Network. The fact that Lu Shu had the mask was still a secret. Everyone knew that the Heavenly Network had obtained the relic from the Kochang Island remains, but no one knew what function the relic had. Lu Shu had only wanted to watch the two organizations fight. He knew that once he made his move, there would be an awkward silence. But when he saw Howard's staff, he could not resist. But anyways, he had told Xiao Yongchen to go with the flow. The flow was most intriguing. Howard's expression darkened. He turned and looked at Francesco. Is he from your organization? Francesco laughed. He neither confirmed nor denied. This person was definitely not on Howard's side. If he could apply the pressure of another hidden Class B on Howard, then there was no reason not to be happy. Very good. Howard laughed. As expected of a sanctimonious organization. You would only commit such immoral acts. There were over 20 Department of Faith Theory members there. Their expressions changed. Howard's words were belittling the entire Department of Faith Theory. Francesco said in a very tolerant tone, "It is honorable to forgive the faults of others." As he finished talking, Howard's sleeves flapped in the still air. His entire body had burst into flames. Even his hair had turned into flames. His eyes magnificently blazed. He said, "Did you think that you could gain the upper hand because I have lost my staff? How laughable. This is the reason why you shut yourselves in when you encountered the puppet master, while we chose to face her." In a flash, the fire phoenix suddenly struggled free of the silver light from Francesco's sword and returned to Howard. Howard floated in midair like a deity. The splendid fire phoenix suddenly spit a large flame in Francesco's direction. The flame rushed towards him like a powerful current. Francesco was no longer calm and at ease. He knelt down on one knee and stuck his sword into the ground. A pure, white shield surrounded him. At that moment, there was suddenly a sharp roar that pierced through the dark night. Countless needles attacked. Howard had been hiding a metal-type Class B metahuman. Howard and his comrades immediately joined forces and planned to kill Francesco. The Earth element metahuman wanted to provide aid, but suddenly stopped in his tracks. An Australian Class B metahuman was blocking his way. Howard's backup was far more powerful than Francesco's. Boom. The current of flames and the needles clashed above Francesco's shield of light. The explosion resulted in countless turbulence in the air. The turbulence were like thin threads that recklessly covered everyone's vision. The subordinates on the sidelines had no way of interfering. They were all sent flying outwards. Within the chaos, Francesco suddenly pulled out the sword in the ground and pointed it at Howard. He wanted to give up on defense and use his most powerful attack to kill Howard. This would prove who was truly stronger. A sword appeared out of thin air. A set of knight armor also appeared on Francesco's body. The Fire Phoenix dived towards Francesco. Both of them were going full out. There was another explosion. Cracks started to appear on the ground. The clash of energy rippled through the dark night sky. Howard and Francesco both flew backwards. Both sides had sustained injuries. At that moment, someone started jumping around like stars in the night sky. He went against the waves of energy and stepped onto the battlefield. He had resisted this frightening clash of energy. When Francesco and Howard saw him, they had an unpleasant premonition. Francesco did not say anything. Howard was silent. After the person entered the battlefield, he seemed like he was looking for something. As his eyes fell on Francesco, there seemed to be a reaction from him. He rushed towards Francesco and jumped over in one go. The next moment, Francesco felt that someone else was holding the sword in his hands. Francesco, who was still in midair, held on to his sword tightly. What the? From Francesco Russo's distress, plus 666. The person spoke in English. He said to Francesco in a small voice, "You have a fungal infection on your nail. It will spread to him too." Francesco exclaimed, "What?" Francesco was shocked, and in that moment his sword was taken away. Until now, Francesco could not understand why that person had said that to him. He had no fungal nail infection. At first, he had still thought that that person had something important to say to him. But now, there was no trace of him? Are you out of your mind? At that moment, Francesco dropped a metal ball from his right sleeve. He wanted to make the metal ball explode and bring Lu Shu to death with him. But before he could make the ball explode, Lu Shu had already run off. From Francesco Russo's distress, plus 999. Chapter 650, Clear Up. The battle between the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society, anticipated by both parties for a long time, suddenly turned into a comedy because of the stranger's appearance. Given the ongoing competition among top-notch organizations for power and influence, the fight between the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society seemed inevitable. It could happen either in or out of the remains, and the winner would certainly enjoy greater dominance in the world. However, what had actually happened today in the battle would probably be a shameful event for the both of them. But Francesco found the man's despicable moves to be totally inexplicable. At first, Howard almost coughed up blood after being hit by Francesco and losing his control over spirit chi. Then, he could not help but laugh upon seeing Francesco's weapon being stolen. From Francesco Russo's distress, plus 999. In fact, Howard's fire staff had not been obtained easily. It took the Phoenix Society an immense amount of research on historical legends to locate a staff so perfectly built for fire-type metahumans. And now, it had been stolen. He was exasperated. But he also knew that Francesco's sword carried even greater significance as it strengthened his superiority in the department. To him, the sword was both a weapon and a symbol of power, and now it was gone too. It felt strange. Howard was supposed to be sad, but he was not. While struggling, the two men stood up from the ground. Suddenly, they were no longer sure whether they should carry on with the fight. Their train of thought had been disrupted too. At this moment, there seemed to have been a silent consensus reached between Francesco and Howard. After an exchange with their eyes, they ran off towards the direction Lu Shu had disappeared into, along with their own people. Francesco said with a cold laugh, "It's your own stupid idea, to lure out the Heavenly Network expert using a conflict between us so as to weaken them. But we've lost loads before the Heavenly Network has even come out." The temporary alliance between the Department of Faith Theory and the Phoenix Society was totally unexpected to the outsiders, who had been anticipating a deadly fight between them. In reality, they were trying to kick out the Heavenly Network first. Then, to their surprise, there was not even a single Class B in the Heavenly Network's team, which led to a change in their plan. They had long since decided to kill a Heavenly King. It was widely recognized that the Phoenix Society and the Department of Faith Theory were almost the strongest in the world, but they were worried about a common rival: the Heavenly Network. Their two organizations were ranked as top-notch for having one Class A each, but the Heavenly Network had two. The great threat they posed was the main contributor to their temporary alliance. They wanted to put in place checks and balances on the Heavenly Network together, and to do so they planned to remove a Class B Heavenly King from the picture. Nevertheless, there was an unimagined plot twist: the much-anticipated Heavenly King was absent. In fact, Francesco and Howard were both confused about it. Besides, who the heck was that thief? From this moment onwards, that guy would definitely be on the top watch list of the department and the Phoenix Society. Howard replied calmly, "But didn't you support the idea too? I reckon there's no need to start the blame game now. On the other hand, it can be confirmed that the Heavenly Network probably has no interest in the mineral reserves because our fight didn't even attract anyone from them, as my men observed." "Wait," Francesco stopped and asked, "your men didn't notice that guy coming?" "They did," replied Howard. "He wasn't watching from the darkness at all. He came straight for our weapons, and my people couldn't stop him." Francesco was speechless. Howard diverted the topic immediately. "Quickly send people to locate that man. Bennett is not a threat. The matter of urgency now is to find that person. They could fight whenever they wanted, but not without their weapons. Their alliance only existed in this scheme against the Heavenly Network. Aside from it, they were enemies in front of remains and mineral reserves. That was how large organizations were usually like. They had shared interests and disagreement too. Now, they had unanimously agreed to hold the competition over the reserves until the troublemaker was found. They had to eradicate external threats before resolving their own issues. Basically, they had to clear up the battlefield first. At the moment, Bennett was still in ignorance. He did not know that he had become a vulnerable target, while he had hoped to keep himself alive using the conflicts between large organizations. He was asking favors from tigers, but he forgot that real tigers were thirsty for blood and flesh. Francesco pondered and said, "As you wish. Bennett is a good place to start." The headquarters of EO had been abandoned. EO had temporarily requisitioned a neighboring building with no intention to pay for the rent. Lu Shu had changed into Howard's appearance and clothes. Now, he was walking towards the building elegantly like a gentleman, with the fire staff in his hand. Normally, the fierce-looking guards outside the entrance of the EO building would not let any stranger in without identity verification. But they did not dare to stand in Howard's way, a Class B expert. Hence, they could only allow his entry and report to their boss immediately. Lu Shu walked in with an arrogant air, as though those EO mercenaries were non-existent. Bennett came to greet him. Lu Shu spoke with a calm smile, "I have a proposal." Bennett did not hesitate any longer. "Come in, please." Having followed Bennett into the meeting room, Lu Shu said directly, "I know you are cornered by the Department of Faith Theory. So, let's be frank. On behalf of the Phoenix Society, I welcome you to join us. Not only so, we will give you 30,000 magical stones, 10 magical weapons and 10 awakening fruits. And you will become a counselor in the Phoenix Society. However, in return, we will have full ownership of the mineral reserves and all mines must be transported to America. Bennett froze. How could it be so good? That was utterly unexpected. But Bennett had his own plans too. He said, "We have another Class B, he should be a counselor too." Lu Shu rose and headed off. "You have no bargaining chips. Come to us tomorrow to claim the items I promised."
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.